You're the failure. You're just a burden we won't carry anymore. Get out. That's what my mother said, standing in the kitchen of the house I scrubbed, cooked in, and quietly cried inside for years. Dad didn't argue. He just looked away and slid a set of house keys across the table. Not to me. To my brother. They gave him everything. Our family business. The second house my grandfather built. And their public approval like a ribbon on top. Me? I got silence. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a plastic bag with my name on it, full of mail and leftovers. I left that night. Didn't scream. Didn't beg. Just left. For 2 years, I didn't call. Didn't show up at holidays. Didn't answer their polite, guilt-laced voicemails that came every few months like clockwork. Instead, I built something. Quietly. Far away. Piece by piece. I bought a small plot of land with the little savings they never asked if I had. Worked 2 jobs. Poured every insult they ever gave me into bricks, blueprints, and borrowed time. And then, 2 years later, my phone rang. It was my brother, number I never saved. But I knew the voice. Panicked. Breathless. He'd just driven past my land. Past the stone gate. Past the manicured trees. Past the new roof with solar panels and the custom glass entryway. And all I heard was him shouting into the phone. Dad, you need to see this place. She built a whole life without US. My name is Emery Blake. I'm 36. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because the ones they threw out, sometimes they don't just rise. They rise louder. After that call, I waited. Not because I wanted them to come, but because I knew they would. Curiosity always follows cruelty, especially when the person you discarded starts glowing in a place you can't reach. 2 days later, a familiar car crawled past my fence. Dad's. He didn't park, just slowed down enough to stare. I stood on my porch with a cup of tea, not waving, not smiling, just existing, which, in their world, was already too much. I watched him drive off, and something in me, something I didn't know was still waiting, finally exhaled. That night, my inbox lit up. Mom. Subject line. We should talk. I opened it. Emery. We didn't mean for things to get so distant. We were just trying to do what was best for everyone. Your brother needed help starting out. You seemed fine on your own. Let's reconnect. Maybe we can come see the house sometime. No apology. No ownership. Just revision. They were trying to write themselves into Act 2 of a story they abandoned at Chapter 1. I didn't reply, but I forwarded the email to myself with the subject. When they pretend they didn't push you. Then I got in my truck, drove into town, and picked up paint samples. I was planning a mural. For the side wall facing the road. A message. Not in words, but in color. In defiance. In presence. Because I wasn't just living. I was seen. And no amount of memory washing could unbuild what I built from nothing. 3 weeks later, they showed up unannounced. I was planting lavender when I heard the car door slam. Dad first. Then Mom, in heels too sharp for gravel, wobbling her way up my stone path like she owned it. They didn't knock. They stood at the edge of the porch like tourists at a monument they never funded. Mom looked around, eyes scanning the wooden beams, the iron lanterns, the details they never believed I could afford. You did all this yourself? She asked, as if I had stolen the land from under someone else's name. I stood up, dirt on my gloves, and said nothing. Just let the silence stretch like wire between us. Dad finally spoke. You should have told us you were doing so well. I tilted my head. You told me I was a burden. I assumed my silence would be a relief. Mom flinched. Not from guilt. From being quoted. We were under stress, she muttered. Your brother was going through a lot. We didn't think you'd thrive. I offered. Survive. She didn't answer. I pointed to the mural, now finished, across the side of the house. It showed a small girl planting seeds while faceless hands tossed stones behind her back. Above it, painted in gold, watered by rejection, rooted in self. They stared at it, speechless. I don't need you to like it, I said. I didn't build this for applause. They left without walking inside. No hugs. No tears. No false promises. Just two shrinking silhouettes in my rearview mirror, and a field of lavender blooming in their place. Days passed. Then a week. Silence again, but this time, it wasn't cold. It was earned. And then, without warning, the message came. From my brother. A photo. The family business, the one they gave him, shuttered. Windows boarded. For lease, sign crooked in the dirt. Captioned with one bitter sentence. Hope your little garden's worth more than our legacy. Our legacy. The same legacy that I was told I wasn't good enough to touch. The one I cleaned after school, took inventory for, worked weekends in unpaid. He ran it into the ground. Hired friends. Ignored the books. Refused advice. He didn't build it, so he didn't know how to carry it. And now he was angry that I hadn't crumbled in his shadow. I didn't reply, but I printed the photo, taped it behind my front door. Not out of pettiness, out of memory. A reminder that not all gifts are blessings, and not all exclusions are losses. The next day, I opened the envelope that had been sitting on my desk for months. The deed to my land. Fully paid. No loans. No cosigners. Just me. I signed the back. Stamped the official record. Filed it with the county. Ownership not just of land. Of story. Of self. They gave him walls. They gave me air. He suffocated in his inheritance. I learned how to breathe on my own. And the air was sweeter than anything money ever bought. The story might have ended there, but people like them don't leave loose ends. Mom emailed again. This time with a photo of her and my brother at a charity gala. Dressed to impress. Caption. Still standing. Family always finds its way. No greeting. No context. Just a not-so-subtle reminder that they still had each other. Still standing. I stared at that phrase longer than I should have. Because standing and growing aren't the same thing. And roots, once ignored, don't return to the soil that starved them. So I posted something of my own. A photo of the greenhouse I'd finished building. My hands covered in soil. A caption that read, "Some of us weren't handed anything, so we built everything we needed. By hand. In silence." The response? Hundreds of shares. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I needed to see this today. You're doing more than growing. You're thriving. I wasn't looking for validation. But for once, I felt seen on my own terms. Later that evening, my neighbor came by with fresh bread. She glanced at the mural and asked, "What inspired it?" I paused, then said, "Family, and what blooms after them." She smiled like she understood, and I think she did, because sometimes family builds your foundation, and sometimes they're just the fire that teaches you how to rebuild. Either way, you grow. Fall rolled in quietly, bringing amber leaves and early dusk. I spent most of my evenings on the porch now, tea in hand, peace in my chest. That's when the letter came. Not an email, not a text, a real, handwritten letter with my name carefully penned on the envelope. It was from Dad. "Emery, I drove past again last week. I don't think you saw me. The place looks beautiful. You did more with your piece of land than I ever did with the whole business. I still don't know how to talk to you. I don't know how to undo the way we hurt you. But I wanted to say, I see it now. We got it wrong. I hope you're happy. Dad." There was no manipulation. No ask. Just words. Late, but almost honest. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. But I folded the letter and placed it inside the same folder that held the property deed. Not as a keepsake. As a record. Proof that people can change their words, even if they never change their choices. Later that night, I sat under the string lights in my backyard, watching the shadows dance along the mural. My land was quiet, but my heart wasn't empty, because all of it had taught me that home isn't inherited. It's claimed, built with hands no one believed in, protected by boundaries no one respected, and filled with love that doesn't ask for proof. They may have given my brother the title, but I made something untouchable. Winter came, and with it, silence. Not the kind I feared anymore. The kind I chose. The letter from Dad was the last I ever received. No follow-ups. No visits. No staged family interventions. They had said their piece. And I had heard it. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the table that taught you hunger. Instead, I kept growing, expanded the greenhouse, started hosting weekend workshops for women in the area, women like me, quiet builders, late bloomers, daughters who were told to settle for silence. One afternoon, after a class, a woman lingered behind. She said softly, "I know you don't talk much about your past, but did you build this place because of them?" I smiled, not sad, not bitter, just honest. "No," I said. "I built it because of me. They were just the reason I had to start from scratch." She nodded like she understood, maybe too well. Later that night, I stood on the back porch and looked at the mural again. I'd added to it last week, just a small detail. A second figure, standing beside the girl planting seeds. Not helping her, not handing her tools. Just watching, letting her bloom on her own. It represented something I hadn't realized I'd found. Witnesses, not saviors. People who saw me as I was, not as I failed to be. Family, it turns out, isn't always blood. Sometimes, it's the ones who show up after the fire and sit beside the ash without asking you to pretend it never burned. Spring returned like a soft exhale. My lavender fields stretched wider now, buzzing with bees, bending with wind. The greenhouse thrived. And so did I. I received one final delivery in the mail, a legal notice. My brother had defaulted on the business loan. They had used the family home as collateral. It was gone. The empire they gave him had crumbled. The inheritance they thought was legacy had become debt. For a moment, I wondered if I should feel something. Pity. Vindication. But all I felt was distance. Like watching the end of a movie you walked out of years ago. A week later, a local magazine asked to feature my land. The lavender, the murals, the workshops. They titled the piece, "From Discarded to Rooted, a woman who built backward and bloomed anyway." I didn't post it, didn't send it to them, didn't need to, because my revenge was never meant to be loud. It was always this, living well, without them. That weekend, a little girl from the neighborhood brought me a drawing. Stick figures in front of a purple field. One of them had curly hair and muddy gloves. Below it she wrote, "I want to grow up just like you. The kind of lady who makes things stay alive." I hung it beside the mural. Because sometimes, the real legacy isn't in what you're given. It's in what you plant, what you protect, and what grows because you refuse to stay buried.